So first, we're going to begin with Cindy Eggleton. She is the co-founder and CEO of Brilliant Detroit, and which has a history of working with, for, and by families to build a Detroit where all children are successful. She coordinates existing evidence-based programming through houses in the middle of neighborhoods to ensure that families with young children have what they need to be school-ready, healthy, and stable. Cindy sees this as the work of her life and is committed to growing this impact to affect population level change in Detroit. So Cindy, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we look forward to your presentation. Cindy,
Thank you, everyone. It's just such an incredible honor to be here with you. And I want to just start by what my view into this is, and that is because we focus on creating kid success neighborhoods in the middle of urban neighborhoods. And we serve over 7,000 people. I'll tell you a little bit about that. So it's really as a practitioner. So the first question I just want to ask us all and to think about is, what does play have to do with mental health, right? And I'm sure many of you do know that. If we can move to the next slide. Okay. And what we've learned along the way is really that play heals. And I want to talk about that because one of the things you're going to see with our statistics is without healing, there is both no joy and there is no well-being. And that's an important piece of what we've learned along the way. So next slide. So in Detroit, 60% of kids under 5 live in poverty. 75% of adults, when tested in a study, were shown to suffer from clinically post-traumatic stress, and only 15% of kids read at grade level by 3rd grade. Now, what I want to point out there is the 75%, which is also a high incidence of ACEs. We started our work thinking we were going to hit the 15% of kids and provide programming, which we do, to help lift grade level. We found that unless you really tend to the well-being of kids and family, and they feel stable, supported, and are healing, they don't learn as quickly or at all. Next slide. So what we do is we go into a neighborhood and we are invited in. We repurpose a house in the middle of the neighborhood. So right off the bat, as we're talking about play and learning environments, this is critical. We generally take a home that was really a symbol of decline in Detroit and turn it into a symbol of hope. We coordinate continuous evidence-based care for the entire family, belly to 8, and we connect with families with a community of support, building on, first off, social emotional well-being, and then the education, health, and family support. We have learned very, very clearly that unless we focus on play, on what I almost call magical spaces, kids and families don't grow, and it matters how those are designed. Next slide. So part of our mission and our approach is to figure out from the neighborhoods, what do you want and what do you hear? As we were starting and as we continue to do this work, we do listening sessions in neighborhoods. And this is going to point to what it feels like. And that's really what I wanted to leave everybody here with, is because our dream is really to create Detroit as a play city. So what we heard, and one of the most impactful things I heard, was my neighborhood has no color. In other words, there's no hope. It's dreary. It's not enjoyable. There's no places for kids to play. The next is, I don't want to be labeled, and truthfully, I don't want my kids to be told they're living in poverty and that they have no chance. And the third is, and especially at the time, the expression I like is, I need some oxygen and fun. People are always throwing at us things to do that we really just need to connect. We heard this from kids and we've heard this from adults. So I just really want to point those pieces out. Next slide. What we know about play, and I want to give a couple of examples here, is we all know it builds attachment. You cannot have proper well-being, or you cannot have learning and growth or even be ready for kindergarten unless you build attachment. By forming relationships together and really having your tribe, that's what matters. And it helps with problem solving. We started all of this off that way. What we've seen though, and what I want to point out is it does matter how you set up spaces, and that it has to be sort of everywhere, every day, any place, right? And so we've seen in some of our own spaces when we've redesigned them inside our houses. We also have playgrounds outside of our houses. And also we do pop-ups in our neighborhood laundromat, etc., that kids don't just play, they learn how to attach in a better way. When it is chaotic and it is not designed in a way to nurture that, it becomes problematic. We've found that investing in that matters. It matters totally. We've actually seen kids and families find their way when it's done differently. Next slide. Now, what I want to say here is we talk about play and we talk about well-being and we talk about mental health. I want to talk a little bit about the other side of all of that. So oftentimes we're talking about adverse childhood experiences. And in Detroit, you cannot have 60% of kids under 5 living in poverty without a high incidence of ACEs. But what we have found is instead of treating this as a problem, if we really work to build resilience and joy, which has included for us even sending out joy boxes once a month with one of our partners and actual board members, that helps build stories and play and also just ways for families to connect. Our data is showing that actually more than our evidence-based practices for literacy does more for that family. And let me be clear, with our tutoring, we've been able to raise grade levels 2 grades. But it all starts with helping to build the sense of resilience, joy, and can-do-itness and hopefulness. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I want to really emphasize those are the data points that we found. We're working with Harvard's Developing Child as a result of it to actually recreate our logic model to start here as opposed to anywhere else. Next slide. So what does that mean? I talked a little bit about where we see that transformation of spaces makes everything. This needs to be everywhere in my view. So it's one-on-one. How do you nurture play and relationships and joy one-on-one? And really there's many theories of change that suggest you start with an individual, you build to a group, and then you get to system-wide. For us, that is what it is. We foster it in every relationship. We train our staff in this. We help train our adult parents and caregivers in this so that this happens. And then we are creating spaces that nurture this. And that has meant in some of our locations redesigning how things are and how people interact. The other thing is pop-ups. So it's an issue of How do you find that space? How is this part of every day? And then permanent installations, which gets to that my neighborhood has no color. That has also included for us play in the street. During COVID, we are doing open streets in 3 of our 12 neighborhoods that have really brought people out in beautiful ways, where we are creating learning and games for the family that they can do safely. And I have heard story after story after story that has meant everything to everybody. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So I just want to show you so you can feel this a little bit viscerally, what this can do for a neighborhood. I'm showing you a before and after room in the middle of the neighborhood of a child's room. You see a house before and after, and you see one of the children's rooms within the space. Now, we've had to design it in between that, but we really are taking and creating a sense of joy. And I call it magic as well. One of our participants early on when I was giving a talk said to me, when I was giving a talk, we didn't have blinds on the window yet. And she asked, could I say something? And I said, of course. And she said, she started to cry. And she said, listen, this house started to change. I've lived here 12 years and it's been beautiful. But she said, yesterday I stood on a street corner. Now remember, or think about, this was Thanksgiving, so it was cold. And I just cried looking at the house. And I said, why? Her name was Dottie. She said, when I looked in, I felt hope. There was nothing but kids playing. It spreads. It really does. Next slide. So just, it's about the connectedness and play. And then the last here slide. So what we also say is that through our doors, and one of our participants said this best, is she said, I'm 26, I have 4 kids, I've had a hard life, I've always needed support and help. But every time I went into a community or an organization, people were doing something to me. This is how mental health is. They were labeling me and they were providing a support. I never felt cared about until now. This has been a place for her to come and a gathering place. When we weren't in COVID, she came 5 days a week. Her children are also have the same issues she has, which she does have significant quote unquote mental health issues. But what she was really saying to me is organizations provide programs and services, but a community and the ability to just enjoy each other and play together, that actually provides hope. We're both. And I really invite everybody on this call to think about, how do you incorporate that into your work? Next slide. So this is an information slide if you need anything from me or want to know anything more. But I wanted to kind of take my last 4 minutes of talking and lift up what happened this summer in Detroit with this work. It's going to take you through the idea that we have COVID, we have racial unrest, and what does that feel like? And also what our emphasis is, and don't get me wrong, we want to have academic outcomes, but we're not sometimes just talking about how do we build resilience and joy in the neighborhood. So this is just a piece to kind of lift that up and hopefully inspire all. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for having me.
From the Ashes by Jasmine Parks. The city of Detroit's motto is, we hope for better things. It should rise from the ashes. A new year began, and with it, new hope that better things would find us. Yet this year, we found ourselves in the middle of a pandemic and protests and shutdowns of our schools and cities and economy, while being surrounded by so much death and living through it all. In a new world in which everyone and everything was scattered to the wind, how fear burrowed itself into our homes, how we were cut off from the outside world and each other, and what seemed to be an apocalyptic foretelling unfolded. It appeared the world was on fire, burning around us, and our hope alone would not extinguish the flames. But as the days droned on into weeks and months and seasons, we were reborn of the brilliant burning, became anew in the flames. We became phoenixes, rising from the ashes, decided to fight fire with fire. We prepared to act, to heal, to thrive. Our neighborhoods and families did not give up. How, you ask? We came together as neighbors, of course. As a community, we unified. Family, staff, volunteers, all rolled up our sleeves, said the work is for our families to feel safe and secure during this time. We dropped food off to each other, leaving no family left unfed. Because we are each other's harvest. We made baby bundles for our smallest loves, new to this new world. We were able to offer financial support for over 600 families in a time of economic uncertainty. We are each other's business, each other's magnitude, and each other's arms. It made a difference for parents to provide for our children, to remind ourselves of our wings to take flight into our power, so we affect the change we wish to see at home, on our blocks, in our community, to remember that we are phoenixes, resurged from the debris. The soot of the aftermath would not weigh us down. Watch us rise, ashen but alive, determined to reclaim everything we lost. Watch us find an untapped strength, carry the burdens unalone, unafraid, become each other's keepers, break the binding fear of isolation. Watch us fly high into the sky, a flock of feathers, drinking the sun, a flock of feathers finding freedom on the depth of a new horizon, and a new dawn, and a new day, and a new world. Watch us rise. Watch us rise. Watch us rise. Watch us take flight and become light.
Wow, thank you, Cindy. You're getting a lot of love in the chat, so just want to make sure you're seeing that. That was a great video.
Thank you. Thank you. And it speaks to what we can all do in our own work.